There are three things that I see newer writers do that are putting their word count up way too high. My name is Gina. I'm an author, editor, publishing professional. I help you make your writing better. People often come to my comments and they complain about how they just absolutely cannot get their word count down underneath 200,000 or 150,000 words, and they are worried about being a debut author and trying to get underneath that 100,000 word count. And there are three different things that I think that most of these newer writers are doing that I see often when they send their manuscript along for editing. Those three things are that they are repeating themselves way too often, they are including way too much backstory, and they are not having scenes do more than one thing at a time. I'm going to start with that last one because it is the easiest one to look at. So if you are talking about scenes need to be doing more than one thing at one time, this is going to be easy to identify because you will have lots of scene breaks happening very quickly on the page. And so if you have a chapter that is broken into like 4 or 5 scenes, or each scene is only lasting a page or a page and a half, and you have one that is like, this is a conversation, and then we are traveling, and then we are going to work, you're not doing more than one thing at a time, and so you are using up way too much space and way too many words to do something that could be done much more quickly. So if you have a character that needs to have a difficult conversation and you need to show her getting to work and you need to do some world building stuff at the same time, the conversation happens on the phone while she is going to work, rather than making them 3 discrete and separate scenes from one another. You're going to roll them all into one. This is going to take usually what looks like 3 1,000 word scenes and rolls them into like one 1,500 word scene, and you're going to be able to cut a bunch of words, but you're going to have it be much more impactful and much more immersive. The second one is also fairly easy to identify, but it is a little bit harder to do emotionally, is that you are including way too much backstory. This is almost always going to be in the form of like a very info dumpy first couple of chapters, and even if you have a lot of dialogue on the page, or if you have a lot of cool world building and like beautifully written sentences, if it is all backstory, how we got to this political situation, what happened to this person when they were a child, or we're starting in their childhood and then jumping forward, all of these things are backstory, and they most likely need to be cut. And I know that that hurts, but there's also very little space for most of that to be in the book. This writing is not wasted. This is all something that you as the author needed to know in order to make that book feel real and immersive, and for you to understand how your character is going to behave. And all of this backstory is going to inform the decisions that are happening on the page, but it doesn't actually need to be on the page. This is going back to that iceberg metaphor in which the audience is only going to see a very small bit of the story, but you as the author need to know what is underneath it that is shaping that bit. And then the last one is the one that is hardest to identify, and it is also the hardest to cut out because you have to go like with surgical precision. You're sort of like excising out little bits, and this is where people are repeating themselves too often. And you think that this would be easy to identify, but it's honestly not. This will be where like a character experiences something, and then they go inside and they tell their mom the thing that they experienced, and then later on, while they are dealing with the ramifications of it, they're going to relive it and they're going to rehash it. And while this is all very realistic, we do this in real life where we experience something and then we go tell somebody about it, or we worry about something before it happens and then it actually experiences it, and then we go back and we rehash it after the fact. Like, that's all very realistic, but it is also extremely boring on the page. Your audience doesn't need to get that information 3 separate times. And that is the most common number that I see, is that people are giving information 3 separate times on the page, because there's like the beforehand, the worry, the anticipation, the actual experience of it, and then the recap afterwards. Or they experience it, it was shocking, they recap it the first time, and then once they've had time to process, they recap it again. Or you tell it to us in one person's point of view and then in another person's point of view, or you see it from after the fact, or it's told like from an outsider's perspective. This is the stuff that's a little bit harder to pick up on because it's going to be said different ways each time, and so you don't see it as repetitions. We're not repeating the exact same words, but we are dumping the same information on people too many times. And so you have to go in with some surgical precision, and you have to remove this paragraph and be like, oof, but this one line was really important, so I need to figure out how to take that one line and incorporate it someplace else. This is a much more difficult thing to do, but it is also going to reduce word counts significantly.